All right, back with another Thursday Night Tailgate, and my guest tonight is Indian Creek coach Max Goodin. And good vibes out here at Indian Creek. It's your second year here now, and Indian Creek off to a 4-0 start to the season, ranked number 9 in the USA Today Network Indiana poll that we put out on Monday. And I know rankings don't matter that much, but the fact that you guys are off to this great start, just what's it say about where you guys are at right now as a program?
We're really excited. First 4-0 start in 11 years, that's a big deal. However, we're heading into the teeth of our schedule. We're in the HLC now. We're really excited to compete and get after it. Obviously, good momentum. You want that fresh and that good momentum to start the season. Validation for hard work in the summer and the off season and everything. But we're going to earn our keep these next few weeks. So, and that's a good thing. We're not scared by any stretch. We know we can compete. We know we're a good football team, but so are the other teams that we're going to see. And it's good to be tested like that heading into the back half of the season.
This new conference is Hoosier Legends Conference. I think people are starting to find out about it. Very good league, very good games across the board. It seems like about every week. But you have a non-conference game this week against LaPel.
Yeah.
How does that kind of a mid-season non-conference game? I mean, is it a little bit different, or is it just like any other week for you guys?
So we played LaPel last year, week 4. Did not fare very well. Part of that was because the WIC disbanded. Replacing some games. We weren't playing Brown County anymore, trying to find our niche before we played the HLC. So LaPel will be replaced by Shelbyville next year. It just kind of went the way of Cascade leaving the WIC, Brown County, all these other schools. And so we ended up with LaPel midseason and accidentally being one of the better football games of small football in the state, which is really cool. It's good to compete against LaPel and Tim Miller, who's been there for 15 years and runs a heck of a program. They do a great job. We found out firsthand last year. So it's exciting. It's another barometer for us to figure out where we're at, how far we've come as a program, and to go compete at a high level.
I know you came from Decatur Central. It's a different, it's a bigger school. They're playing 6A football in Decatur this year, obviously going up in, success factor from winning state last year. When you come here, it's obviously a smaller school. It's a 3A school compared to what I guess it really is 5A playing 6A. But when you come here, what's maybe the differences? What are the similarities? What did you take from Decatur maybe that has worked for you here?
One thing I will say, fairly frequently is I think people associate 5A football with 6A football. In my experience, I've coached at Division I, football in Ohio, meaning Division I high school football at Cincinnati St. X. I've coached at 1A football at Lafayette Central Catholic. I'm now 3A, 5A. I would say that 5A through 1A is more similar than 5A is to 6A.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the fact that, at Decatur Central, we had a roster of about, 10 through 12, probably about 80 some kids. Obviously, you have a freshman team there on a given year. For us, we have about 65 total, 9 through 12. So for me, it wasn't super shocking in that regard. However, some differences are, how big the school is, general population, how often do you get to see your kids, scheduling differences, maybe travel for road games, different things like that. The mid-state, everything's really close together. But I wasn't too shocked by it. Having been at Lafayette Central Catholic and coaching 1A football, we had a roster of 40, 9 through 12. And if you told a 1A coach that they had 40 kids on their roster, they'd be like, that's a huge roster. We coached against teams that had 25 kids. So I've had a lot of different experiences with that. So it wasn't completely shocking for me. To me, kids are kids no matter where they're at, whether you're at Decatur Central and it's inner city or you're at Indian Creek and School. Are there some differences? Yeah, there are. But at the end of the day, kids want to be coached. They want to be cared about and know that you love them and respect them and take care of them. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit, Max, about your team this year. I think, Evan Clark's a name that people are starting to know about, and you still have another 2.5 years with them. So
Absolutely.
that's a great sign. But Evan played as a freshman, which is even at, I always think if you're trying to play a freshman at 6A, it's going to be hard.
Right.
I know even at 3A, it's probably a lot of learning experience. But start with him, I guess, and what does he bring to the table for you guys? What does he do better maybe this year than he did last year?
One thing I will say is, I was the defense coordinator at Decatur Central, but Bo Polston started as a freshman at Decatur. We scrimmaged Decatur every summer in June. I told Evan this going into his freshman year. I said, you're going to be the starting quarterback. That's really exciting. There's going to be some really high highs and there's going to be some super low lows, and you need to be mentally prepared for that. And it's one thing to say that, but I think if you asked him, he would say, yeah, that's about how it went. And he's learned a lot from that. You even see it early in the season where just his self-talk, different things like that, where he threw an interception early on against Greenwood and he came to the sideline and was visibly frustrated and trying to control his emotions. And he said, I can't keep doing that, and then he went out and had a heck of a game and flipped that switch. Understanding that it's going to be okay. Understanding that those mistakes and that spotlight is on you. And that as a quarterback, your body language and everything affects the entire team. And he's done a much better job of that. He's figuring it out. Him and I have conversations frequently just about whether it's leadership or, hey, you can add this small nuance to your game. But the biggest thing for him is the game's just completely slowed down. Mm-hmm. And whether you talk to Bo or Evan, just as a freshman, you go out there and everything just feels like it's flying. Mm-hmm. And Bo had the same experience as a sophomore where you come out and it just feels so much more under control and you can focus on small nuances. And it's less pressure too, going into it. You go in as a sophomore and your first start as a sophomore is start number 14. That's usually a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
So it's been good. He's done a really, really good job. He's growing up really quick, and he keeps getting better, and we're really, really happy for him. So I'm proud of him too.
And I think sometimes even watching the game, it's obvious. Like you can see the maturation of the quarterback.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to. Yeah, I covered a freshman had to come in the game for HSE last week, and he definitely looks the part, and you can just tell how good he's going to be, but it's still just happening so fast. So I think to your point, it's that experience is just so key for any quarterback. But besides Evan, who are kind of the guys you're relying on this year? And I guess you did lose some key guys from last year. How have you been able to replace them and have the record you have so far?
On defense, our defense has been incredible this season. Obviously, Western, we held them to 13 points week 1, and since then they've averaged 40-some points. Mm-hmm. In the last 3 weeks, our starting defense has given up 3 total points. Greenwood scored on a blocked punt and then kicked a field goal on offense. Those were the 3 points. Covenant Christian, we were up 45-0 at the half and pulled everyone out at halftime. And then obviously had a shutout against Beech Grove. So that group's been really, really good. We have 2 4-year starters on that side of the ball, or 3-year starters, I'm sorry. Alec Burris and Grady Walker are both juniors and started as freshmen. And then Jackson Ramey's over there in secondary as well. He's a 2-year starter on defense, but he's a 4-year starter on offense. So just been thoroughly impressed with our defense. They've done a really, really good job. Coach Renard and the defensive staff, it's just been awesome this year. And then offensively, Jackson Ramey is a 4-year starter on offense. He's been really, really good for us this year as a receiver. We've been we've had 2 tight end sets. We've been in 10 personnel. We've been in 11 personnel. And we feel like we can just get him the ball no matter the circumstances. He's a game breaker for us for sure. New starter at running back this year, obviously we had Malachi Mink, who's a really good running back for us. He's at Indiana Wesleyan now. Drew Pingleton is starting for us as a junior, and he's had a few really nice games for us. Very, very selfless player. He's not a big guy. He's 5'7", about 155 pounds, but he falls forward. He just plays hard. He's a freak in the weight room and does a great job. And then we also have had Hunter Worley starting for a sophomore and Junior Ferguson, who's a 3-year starter at H. Been really, really good players for us. And then our offensive line, we returned 4 of the 5 starters up front. And then next year we'll return 3 of those 5. So we will bring back about 18 total starters next year. So we do feel like we're a pretty young team. But the group has just gelled really, really well, especially for having 8 seniors. Those kids are doing a great job top to bottom, and the team's just really, really come together at the beginning of the season and spent time together, and just really happy all around with that group. So
we'll get talking to Max Goodin here at Indian Creek, and off to a 4-0 start, state ranked. I touched on the fact that you're playing in the conference, the new conference this year. What does that do just from a continuity? You've kind of seen both sides of it now. What does it do from maybe a continuity standpoint, playing teams like you mentioned before we started that are, maybe a little bit more Indianapolis metro area located or around that area? What does this do to be in the conference for you guys?
I mean, I think it makes us more of an Indy metro school. You know what I mean? I think when we're playing in the WIC and we're going down to Owen Valley and Edgewood and the Terre Hautes, we're not really thought of as a local Indy school just because, we're not in that spotlight as much. Being around a Triton Central or a Tri-West, Greenwood, Shelbyville, teams like that, Monrovia, teams that are going to state championships or competing for state championships. That becomes the standard for us too, of who we have to compete with and our level of competition. Last year in the WIC was a good conference for us. It really was. But there was a stretch where, we were playing teams that maybe the best team we played in a 4-week run had 3 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's, the teams that we're playing, whether it, even though we're playing LaPel, Tri-West, and Triton Central in back-to-back weeks, their combined record for the season's 11-1, and the one loss is because they played each other.
Right.
So I just think that raises the bar for us as a program, where we want to be, what the expectation and the standard is. And as a football coach, competition is the greatest motivator. And I heard kids talk about it early in the season or before the season, like, that's going to be a tough run. And then they kind of paused and they said, we're excited about it. You know what I mean? Kids want to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one thing that I really like about our group so far is, like, they're not backing down. They're not scared. And I've told them before, we'll spot the ball in the middle of 135 and play if we have to. So I just think it brings out the best in your kids and your team when you're playing good competition, because they know they've got to show up to practice every single day and put in their best work possible and, do what they have to do in order to play at the highest level. So.
Well, Max, I know as a coach, you don't just show up here and this is your first coaching job.
Right.
What's kind of your background? When did you kind of want to become a head coach? And I guess what kind of led you to Indian Creek?
So when I was I went to Mooresville High School, played for Mark Bliss for 3 years, and thought that I wanted to be around. I definitely knew I wanted to be around sports, but it was like, hey, do you want to be an athletic trainer? Do you want to be a strength coach? Do you want to be a football coach? Do you want to be a sports reporter? All those different things. You kind of figure those things out. Well, I kind of landed on I want to be a college football coach, and that's where I went to Hanover College, played 4 years of football, and I was absolutely hell-bent on being a college football coach, and I wanted nothing to do with high school football or teaching or anything like that. And I got my first GA job at Lindsey Wilson College, and Lindsey Wilson was a top 5 team in NAIA. Got there, we were really good. It was competitive, and I just felt like something was missing, just all around was not sure. Well, one of my close friends, he's now the offensive coordinator at Cincinnati St. X. He was on staff as the receivers coach there. And I had a JV varsity role at Cincinnati St. X under Steve Speck, who just this past week became the all-time winningest coach there, and got a taste of high school football at the highest level in Ohio. And, what's it like? How different is it? And it was awesome. I was fortunate to be a part of the losing a state championship in Ohio's history. We were 5-5, barely made the playoffs, and won the next 5 at the Horseshoe and won a state championship. And it was awesome. But after that season, I was like, I want a bigger role. I want to do more. And Brian Ney and Brian's mother was my kindergarten teacher at Mooresville. Yep. And him and I knew each other from back in the day, and he was at Decatur. And he introduced me to Kyle Enright, and I became a safeties coach there and defensive pass game coordinator. And that was when we had Tyrone Tracy and Bryce Jefferson and all those guys. And I was there for a year. After that, Brian Ney got the LCC job and asked me to be his defensive coordinator. Everything worked out. Spent 2 seasons there. And I think that year at LCC was a big deal for me eventually becoming a head coach, because Kevin O'Shea had left after being there forever. There was an interim coach for 1 season, and we became the next head coach, the next group that took over. And we were those kids' 3rd head coach in 4 seasons. It was a ground-up rebuild, and we were 5-6 and took a nasty one from Jack Kaiser in the sectional championship, as did everyone else.
Everyone else did. Yeah.
But we knew we had to get in the weight room and have a great offseason, and we won the 2019 1A state championship. After that season, Kyle Enright called me and said, love to have you come back and be the defense coordinator at Decatur Central. Had bounced around quite a bit at that point. I knew I needed to stay somewhere for a while, and I spent the next 4 years at Decatur Central as the defense coordinator and had awesome experiences. It was great working for Justin Dixon and Kyle Enright for the time period. Loved my experience at Decatur Central. But I knew I was getting closer and closer to my ultimate goal, which was being a head coach. And we made that state run in 2023 and knew the next year we were going to be really good again. But, if a certain job came open, I was going to go after it. And Indian Creek was one of those jobs that I kind of had circled and said, if this job ever comes open, I'd love to go for it. It came open, and now we're here. So
what's the feeling when you see Decatur win last year? Do you feel like, man, I wish I was there, or were you just, I'm sure you were really happy?
Well, it's funny. when we left in 17, they went the next year in 18, and then we ended up winning it in 19. And then I knew in 23 that, we were probably going to have a really good chance of going back in 24. But when a job like Indian Creek comes open, there's no second guessing it. It's time to go. And that's how I felt about it. And I told Kyle, I said, you guys are going to be just fine. And they did a great job. They got it figured out. And, there was a little bit of struggle there at the beginning, but they stayed together like I knew they would. And they do an awesome job over there. So I'm happy for them, man. There's no regrets on my end. It was time for me to be a head coach. And I knew this was a job in a place that I wanted to be. And I knew that they were going to be really, really good for the next 2 years. And obviously they're killing it again this year. So
yeah, Decatur obviously doing really well, playing 6A now. So
yep.
That'll be a tough challenge in the sectional and beyond. But how about for you guys, just to kind of wrap up here, Max, you have a team, like you said, you're going to have a lot of guys back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of have to stay on them? Like, this is going to be, let's not look ahead to next year. This is going to be important for us this year too, or how do they?
I think our team does a really, really good job of living in the moment. And for us, there's no next year, we feel like we have a ton of opportunities right now, and we were 5-6 last year.
Mm-hmm.
We felt like we didn't reach our potential. We felt like we just wanted to be better than we were last year, whether it was in the weight room, whether it was the continuity, whether it was going to Hanover camp this summer or whatever scrimmages. And that's not a knock on anybody from last year. I got here in April.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's incredibly difficult. And the kids didn't know me very well, and now there's just a trust factor there. So we're very much in the moment, laser focused on lapel and the task at hand, and that's a testament to our kids. I said this to our staff this week. At no time have I felt like this week where it was like, hey, our chests are puffed down. Hey, we're 4-0 and we think really highly of ourselves all of a sudden. But I mentioned that to our kids in our leadership council group on Monday. I said, hey, good teams are good teams all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same. They don't ever change. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. They're the same people day in and day out, whether that's practice, whether that's, anything. And fortunately enough, I've been blessed to be a part of 3 state championship runs, 2 wins and a loss. And I feel like I can look at them and say, hey, we know what this looks like. And we've got guys on our staff. We've got Coach Renard and Coach Rudolph, who were at Whiteland for a long period of time. We've got Coach Scott and Coach Appleton, Coach Butler, who were either coached by Coach Gillen here or coached for Coach Gillen. Some of Coach Appleton did both. So there's a lot of guys on our staff that know what coaching at a high level looks like and what those expectations are. For us, we feel like the biggest thing here is continuity and consistency. Like I said, last year's seniors, I was their 4th coach in 4 years. That's not a recipe for long-term success. And I feel like the longer that we have that continuity and consistency for our kids and for each other, all those things, that's how good programs are ran and how, you build things like Brownstown Central or Gibson Southern or a small school program that's had that sustained success. It's just continuity and consistency. So it's been good. Proud of our kids so far, but a little bit of uncharted territory that we got to learn from on what it's like to be 4-0 and how to handle that success. So,
well, again, Max Goodin joining us here. And one more thing, as I come out here, it's been maybe a couple of years since I've been out here. New field house,
mm-hmm.
The weight room. This feels new to me. It seems like a lot of new
mm-hmm.
facilities going up here. What is kind of the latest you have going on here? What's kind of been built the last couple of years?
So we got a brand new field house, brand new weight room that we're obviously in right now. You walk into this place and it's like, holy cow, there's a commitment from administration to be successful. Hey, what do you guys need? How do we build? It's clear that athletics are important here. As are academics, as are the arts, but you walk into a field house or a turf field or brand new turf baseball and softball, and the ability to hire a staff. I think we have 7 coaches that are on campus or in the building. Our administration, Luke Scoble and Derek Perry, and our superintendent, Dr. Matt Brusecki, who was at Decatur when I was there, you can just tell that they care and that, athletic-based education is really, really important to them. And to me, that's what makes this job attractive is you're in Southern Johnson County. There's a culture of success here laid down by, the Mike Gillen era and the coaches that were here before me. And that people here care about football and that people here care about athletics and that they're here to be successful. And that's a really, really good thing. And if you don't have top-down support, it's going to be really, really hard. But we feel like we have it here, and that's a good thing. So.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much again, Max Goodin, on our Thursday Night Tailgate show. Again, Indian Creek 4-0 at Lapel. I'm sure Devin Craig and Tim Miller, like you said, he's been there forever, so they're going to be ready. But it should be a great game, and look forward to finding out. We'll have coverage, actually, of that game on Friday night as well. So, again, thanks for coming on here, Max.
Hey, thanks for coming out and promoting our program.
You bet. Thank you. Well, thanks again to Max Goodin for joining us on the Thursday Night Tailgate. Good group of games on Friday night coming up. You probably start with Brownsburg and Fishers. And if you want to look, predictions are posted. We have the picks also, short videos posted on each of the games, so you can look at those on YouTube as well, or our site at indystar.com, of course. But yeah, it looks like it's kind of the midweek point. So next week we'll be writing some about kind of the midseason takeaways. What's happened up to this point, maybe what to look for in the second half. Take a look at potential Mr. Football, how things are going 5 weeks into the season. Still a long way to go. It's even kind of early, I would say, even to sort some of those things out. A lot of the better games are even played in the second half of the season. We don't have full complement of games to go by just yet. Some teams have the harder part of their schedule later or whatever. So, but I do think after tonight, or after Friday night, we'll have Fishers, Brownsburg playing each other. You could argue those are maybe the two best teams in the HCC, with Westfield certainly in that mix. HSE, I think, will still be a factor as well. Avon, I think, has shown they're going to be difficult to beat. But yeah, I mean, I think that'll tell us a lot about both those teams on Friday night, and maybe how the HCC will be decided in that game Friday night at Brownsburg. And I was very impressed with Fishers last week, and Gage Sturgill, their quarterback. So yeah, we'll have coverage of that game. We'll also have coverage of Pendleton Heights and New Pal. Both those teams 4-0. New Pal number 1 in Class 5A. Pendleton Heights has risen up to number 6 in 4A and only allowed 28 points so far this season. Again, New Pal 14 in a row in that series, so we'll see what happens there. Westfield HSE, interesting game as well. 2 top 10 teams in 4A. Indian Creek, Lapel, both undefeated. We touched on that game with Max Goodin. Indian Creek 4-0, Lapel 4-0, and both those teams ranked in their respective classes. Ben Davis and Warren, that game on the west side this year. Of course, a long series between those teams that goes back, I believe, to 1937. So that's a series that we see every year. It's been some great games, even going way back, but certainly in the last, 25, 30 years for sure. The all-time series, Warren Central, 59, 38, and 3. Thanks to John Easter for getting me that. I was hitting him up. I had that somewhere, couldn't find where I had it. So this will be the 101st meeting. So the 100th meeting was last year. Ben Davis has won 4 of the last 6 and 6-10. But yeah, Warren has the overall lead in that series and really dominated for a large chunk of the early part of that series. But that will be a good game. Purdue Poly and Attucks, we'll have coverage of that game as well at Broad Ripple on Friday night. Those teams have played really well. Purdue Poly 4-0, Attucks 3-1, and the conference title, the Capital City Conference, could be on the line in that game. Also wanted to touch on something. Terry Walker had posted this, and his dad had kind of let me know yesterday that they got some bad news on his knee injury. The HSC quarterback, he was injured in Friday's game against Fishers, and it looked bad in the moment. You never want to speculate, but it certainly appeared that he had sustained a pretty difficult knee injury, pretty severe. They found out that it's a torn ACL. So I guess not surprising based on kind of what we saw. He was on crutches Friday night after the game and very distraught, a lot of tears. And, it's hard when it's a senior, man. I mean, that's the worst. I've been doing this a long, 25 years of covering high school sports. And it's always the worst thing is to see a senior, miss out on, finishing what they started and having that. And unfortunately in football, we just see this a lot. It's kind of the nature of the game. There's countless teams who go through this, but certainly with Terry being one of the premier players, and he's going on to Duke, and he'll be there. It's September now, so here in just a few months he'll be on a college campus in about 3 months, so or 4 months, I guess, in January. But yeah, so unfortunate for him. Deacon Johnson, their freshman, is a very good player, and I'm curious to see him play more. Big guy with a lot of arm strength and talent, but so he's got a bright future ahead of him. But hate that again for Terry Walker to miss out on. Had a really good career, played at LC most of his time, and then had the senior year at HSC that is cut short now, unfortunately. But yeah, so too bad. Hate to see that for him. I think HSC is still going to be a viable team with Johnson at quarterback and their running game, and the defensive players that they have. But yeah, obviously that takes it's a big blow for HSC. But yeah, so we'll have coverage Friday night from all the games. Come to IndyStar.com. We'll have highlights and results and everything, scores and roundup and everything we have had normally. So yeah, stay tuned. And thanks again for joining me, Max Goodin, for joining me here. Great conversation with him at Indian Creek in his second year. And they have a really, as we talked about, a really interesting next 3 weeks or so. To see if they can come out of that unscathed. But again, thanks for joining me here, and we'll talk to you next time.